on, you know, I kind of went through my own thing with Rick in '92 when I worked with him, where it was, you know, for whatever reason, we went from having really good matches to, like, as soon as I won the title, we were just having lousy matches where we bungled up the finish all the time, or something went wrong, or he missed up the spots, or there was always some kind of where it just wasn't quite right all the time. And Rick was, I remember he told me that he was having some problems at home or something like that, and he was distracted. And maybe that's the case, but I mean, I remember actually going to Vince and going, I think he's sabotaging the matches, trying to sabotage like, we keep screwing up the finish and stuff like that. It's like we're doing the worst endings to our matches out of nowhere. I'm pinning him with like he'll call a small package out of a figure four, and I'll small package him, and he doesn't kick out. And it's like the worst ending of the match. It's so flat, and it's like hardly even a clap. And I'm looking at him like, you're killing me off every night.
And killing himself too, because you.
Well, he was leaving, going to WCW at that time. But I remember telling Vince, like, we had 90 days left with him, and I was working with him, and I said, I'm not sure if he's on the level with me, because he's ruining the match every night on purpose, or it seems to me. And then Vince and me talked about it more, and I think we had meetings with Rick in the building where Pat Patterson flew in, and we talked. And you know what? We did the same thing every night. He still screwed up lots of stuff, and we never quite did it my way. And eventually he left, and I think Vince talked to me a few weeks after, and he said, you know what? I think it's just the way he worked. He didn't do it. It was not so much bad intentions, maybe, as just, that's just how he works. He can only do Ric Flair stuff. He can do the Ric Flair match. He's got to be in control of that Ric Flair match, and that's, you know, he calls it in there kind of thing, which is sort of that was how they worked in the 70s. You know, they call it in there, and everybody sort of imitated Harley Race and Dory Funk, and I think Flair, that's how he came from an era that was, I came on the dividing line of another era that was not quite like that anymore. We could still call it in the ring, but we were more advanced than that.
Did he make a good champion for the WWE's identity of a heavyweight champion at the time?
It depends on how you look at it, you know. I mean, I'm kind of baffled when people tell me that they think Ric Flair was the greatest wrestler of all time. Even though I'm a big fan of Rick's, and I know he had a real hard work ethic. I mean, I was not convinced ever that he was the greatest wrestler that people, or as great as people thought he was.
Well, let's explore that. Why do people think he's the greatest? What are the reasons you hear?
Because he was a flamboyant character.
Charisma,
and he was. But as far as working in the ring, I found him, I wouldn't say ancient, but kind of a whole different mindset to what my generation was all about. He was locked into the 70s and couldn't break out of that.
In your personal philosophy, give me a percentage that you would weight one's charisma, work on the stick, look, kind of the stuff not related to in-ring work, versus what percentage should be what the guy does between the ropes?
Well, the way I always summarize it like this is like, there's 3 categories to being a great wrestler, and if you got 10 points in each category, one category is your look, how you look, and your presence when you walk in the room, when you walk out to the ring. You know, whether you're King Kong Bundy or you're Andre the Giant or you're Hulk Hogan, there's a certain look that when you walk and you see them, you go, wow, you know. And there's lots of wrestlers that have all kinds of warrior, or, you know, it takes a lot to have a great look. Some wrestlers, it just could be their size or what they're, you know, what they've been blessed with is from growing up or whatever. But I mean, the next category is your actually workability, whether you can actually wrestle. And if you got 10 points in that category out of 10, how do you rate? And the other category would be your promos and how well you can sell yourself, your ability to sell yourself as this commodity that you're trying to sell. And you take all 3 of them and you mix them together, and where you fit in the wrestling world, I would base it on that ratio. Is how do you size up out of 30? You know, and that's.
How was Flair's and Vince's relationship in this short time?
Well, you know what? I think there was a lot of hopes pinned on Rick. And again, I might be wrong because I was kind of just clawing to get up into that top echelon. And there was a big shift, and within a matter of time, I was in that top sort of echelon of knowing what's all going on, and you're on the top and you can look down. But in those days, I was still just about there. But and you look at Dynamite Kid, you know, he was a 0 out of 10 promo, but he was a 9 out of 10 wrestler, and he had a 7 or 8 out of 10 look, you know. And even in my own case, I think that you know, probably my weakest area was my promos. I was probably you know, maybe in my best days, I was maybe a 7 or 8 or 6, 7, 8 or somewhere in there with the promos. I could do well with when I had a good issue to talk about, like in '97. My look, you know, I wasn't 6'4", I wasn't 6'8", I didn't have 25-inch pythons, and I didn't have, you know, I wasn't 8 feet tall. And I'm your basic wrestler. I was 6 feet tall. I was 235 pounds. I was 235 pounds when I started, and I was 235 pounds when I was champion. You know, I would say I was, you know, a 7 or 8 out of 10 on my look. I had a decent look, and the pink and the black was kind of cool, and the sunglasses, and it was different than Hogan and anyone else. There wasn't a lot of Bret Harts that came down the pike before I came along. So I was original, and so then it's like, how good was my wrestling ability? And I think in that category, I think I was as close to being a 10 out of 10 as you. I made very few mistakes in the ring.
And maybe it also depended a little bit on what decade you worked in as to which of those 3 columns was weighted more than another. So, you know, if you see a Billy Graham or even Hogan in the early 80s.
Yeah, well, it depends on what kind of fan you are. I mean, as a fan, you know, I was impressed by good bodies. You know, there was lots of good bodies that came through my dad's territory, including Billy Graham. But I wasn't about the bodies. As a fan, I was about the workers.
Okay.
You give me a Harley Race over a Billy Graham any day. Like I wanted my wrestling to be real. I wanted it to look real. I wanted it, and I liked them to be, you know, I liked them to look like athletes and, you know, sell themselves like athletes. And that was always inclined. What worked well with bodybuilding, because they were muscle guys, because they looked like athletes and stuff, and they were impressive guys. And I watched a lot of big guys lift weights and stuff, and was really impressed by them. But I mean, to me, I was always more fascinated with the guys that could do the really intricate moves. I'd rather watch Billy Robinson than Hulk Hogan.
Gotcha.
And what was going on with Rick is, I think it was just the tough job of having to fill Hogan's shoes, and that scandal rocked everything. I mean, the steroids were a dirty word in the world and everywhere, in the media and everywhere. So it's like wrestlers had been tainted with that Hogan rush and steroids, and how none of us were athletes, we were all blah, 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 and it really affected everything, and business really tapered off, and Rick got thrown the football, and no one can ever take away from Rick that he didn't work hard. He worked hard every night. He would give you everything. He'd give you his heart and soul out there, and he'd come back drenched in sweat. And, you know, but I think the matches were lacking. They were, you know, for a lot of us wrestlers and fans included, I think it was like, it's the same old show. We've sing all this stuff before.
But not aware of any strain between Vince and Rick?
No, but I do remember later on, skipping ahead to I think it was probably not long after SummerSlam. It was a TV taping, and we did a Saturday Night Main Event, I think, in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And I do remember, because it was a Saturday Night Main Event, that there was quite a lot of you know, counseling with Vince and closed door sessions with Vince and Randy and Rick working out their match and getting it all set. And anyway, I just remember whatever. I think I was on the same main event. I might have worked with Papa Shango or somebody, but I worked with somebody, and I just remember when Rick and Randy went out, when they came back through the curtain after the match, Vince went ballistic on both of them. and told them that they had to go right back out and do the whole entire match over again the way he told them to do it, and that he was furious. And they both walked right out. They started the match over again, and they had the whole intros again, and they did the whole match over again. And I can just remember Vince throwing his headset down when they came back through the second time, and he's like, fuck it, just get out of here. You know, they did this exact same match that they did 10 minutes before, and they didn't do any of the stuff, apparently, that Vince had specifically told them to do. And I think that was the death knell for Rick. That was when they went, this guy can't do what we need him to do, and we need someone that can. And how they picked me, I'm not sure.